Let's go. And again, if you can't hear the audio, please let me know. Designing in Flutterflow is as easy as drag and drop. You notice that there are two sidebars. The left sidebar has elements. These are the building blocks used to build a page. First, I start with adding a picture element and then inserting my logo. You can upload your own image to use it in your application. Then, to create space between certain elements, I inserted a row element. I think that this will make it easier on users to use the application. The right sidebar allows you to make adjustments to the elements or even create page or route parameters. But we will get into page and route parameters later. So, after inserting a picture, I then inserted a text element. Then I increased the font size of the text element I inserted and updated the wording. I then inserted a statement recommending users consult a professional before doing any of the financial advice recommended. I also adjusted the size of this warning. Then I also realigned the heading, text. So I'm going to pause right here to give everyone some additional details. So what I'm building here is actually a financial app that I'm hoping that I can put out there that will give people the opportunity to ask questions and then get some financial advice. But because, of course, that's very risky, you see me putting in this context of a warning to say, hey, this is just advice, consult a professional, that kind of thing. But you can see as I'm going through this how intuitive it is to build while I'm just dragging and dropping and resizing all the content. Next, I inserted another row element. Then I inserted or looked for a list element. This element will contain 3 options that allow users to select their risk tolerance. That factor will be passed to Gemini, and Gemini will use that to determine the type of response. For instance, a conservative risk tolerance will deliver a response that focuses on slow and steady financial growth versus more risky endeavors. I also took the time to realign this element so that it better suited the page. Then I start to search for another element called a button. This button will be used so that when a user types in their response, they can send that response to Gemini. So I will connect this to the Gemini model. And then when someone clicks it, the model will run and generate a response. But I quickly realized that it makes more sense to have the question, i.e. the user response or question text box first before the button. I was able to quickly remove the button, insert a text box, align it to my liking, insert a separating row, and then add the button back with ease. As I'm doing this, I'm consistently going to the right sidebar to make adjustments to each element so that it better suits my needs, including sizing and alignment. This is really important because this will be my test page. I want it to look pretty close to what I may be releasing into production, even though I may be making adjustments. So you'll see I'm often adjusting the alignment so that's easier for the eyes as well as the sizing of the text. I'm also adjusting the wording on each element so that it doesn't just say certain things. For example, instead of it saying button, it will say send, which is really important because I want that to be intuitive to the user as they start to use this application. I also use plenty of row elements to separate different elements so that again, it's not all bunched together. Easier on the eyes for the user. Now, I get a chance to add the final text box. This text box will be where the output of the model will appear. I will link it to the send button so that the output appears here. Currently, I am just adjusting the size of the box and the output. I don't want the output and the size of the box to be too small. This is taking into consideration that people may have issues with their eyesight and need to see the text in bigger font. Again, similar to before, I'm adjusting different sizing parameters and alignment of the text box that better fits the application. Okay, so you could see in that video just how quick and easy it was for me to just basically design the application itself, right? Drag and drop, resize, find the what they call elements that I need, customize those to what I'm looking for. So again, very intuitive, no coding in any kind of iOS or Android specific coding languages for their apps. It was just a drag and drop. Designing. So now we're going to actually start creating the custom code. Now, before anyone kind of panics, what you have to understand is there is some coding involved with using the Gemini model, right? But we actually won't be doing any code here because you can use Coding Assistant, which you'll see in the video, to actually create your code. And you would also need to get, and this is really important, your Gemini API key. And so what is that? There is a way that you can get the Gemini API key for free, and I'll explain that in a couple of slides or in the couple of next slides. And you'll be able to actually use a free tier of the Gemini model. So that way you can use and test your models as you go along. So you'll see me do that here in this video. But I do want to let you know that we're still in a no code area, right? We're still doing no code. We're not doing anything outside of that. And you'll be able to see and demonstrate that here. Next, I will generate the code for the Gemini model. First, on the farthest toolbar, go to Custom Code. Here, there are a couple of options. You can select Custom Functions, which are custom Dart functions that can be used to set widgets or actions. Custom Actions, which are custom Dart functions that can be triggered by action triggers or used as nodes in an action flow. These are usually async functions and are able to import custom package dependencies. You can also select custom widgets, which are custom Flutter widgets, which can be used in the same way components are used throughout your project. You can see that there is an AI code assist. Here's where you will generate your code. You can use natural language to prompt for a code to do certain actions. Then you can take the code and do one of two things: use it as is, or refine it by refining your prompt. Here I am typing in a request for the code that will be the base for what I will use later. Now you can see that the code is pretty good. But note that as I scroll down, it used the incorrect risk tolerance classes. So I go back to the prompt and update it to include the correct classes, which are aggressive, moderate, and conservative. Then I will click the green button to get the correct output. Now, I go back to the custom action page and first change the name of the action to something relevant to me. Then I import the HTTP package into the code. The HTTP package is your gateway to making HTTP requests. Think of it as a toolkit for communicating with servers over the internet. In particular, this package enables the application to fetch data from APIs, send data to servers, and even handle different HTTP methods. Basically, it provides the building blocks for your Dart application to interact with web service APIs. Since we're using the Gemini API, this package is important and must be imported into your application. Next, I will be inserting my code. Note that I already wrote the complete prompt and generated the code using the AI coding assistant before this presentation started. Take the opportunity to create your own prompts and explore what coding outputs you receive. Another important thing to note and remember is that you must have a Gemini API key, which you can generate beforehand. To do that, you want to go to Google AI Studio. You go to that site for the first time, you accept the warnings, and then go to Get API Key, Create API Key, and copy this key. You will insert this into the code. Once I was sure that everything's saved, if there are severe errors in the syntax, it won't save. I went back and updated the call to the Gemini API key that I already imported and saved in the Gemini API key section. Then I clicked Save again. Okay, so you can see there, again, no coding was involved. I just typed in a prompt, refined the prompt, kept refining it, finally got the code I wanted, copy and pasted it in. Now, I mentioned before getting your Gemini API key and the site to go to. I'm going to put that site in the chat so that you can go to it, if you so choose, to get your API key. And from there, you can input that and use that actually for your applications. Next, I will generate the code. So now, as I've been explaining before, I've got my app built, right? The first page of the app, and then I've got the code. Now I've got to link everything together so that when a user selects their financial risk tolerance and types in their question, that information gets sent to Gemini, and then the model will respond. So this is where we're going to link it all together so you can see exactly what that looks like. Now that we have designed our UI and create the code to call the Gemini API for our response, it is time to link everything together. In the right-hand side toolbar, there are two options: route settings and page parameters. Parameters are variables that can be passed to a component, like a custom button or card, from its parent page. First, I'm going to define a parameter to pass. This parameter will allow me to link the UI to the custom action. Then this parameter will be used to link the response from the custom action to the text box. Note that I'm making sure to name it something relevant so that I can know what is it referencing later. Since this parameter will pass along text, I update it to be a string type. Next, I go to the send button and select action. There, I will link the previously created custom action to the button so that when it is clicked, it will call the Gemini API key and send through the response. Note that this does autosave when you create that custom action. When you're looking to insert your custom action, you can always go down to the drop-down bar here when you add the action. And when you're selecting that action, you can search for it. So that's why before on the previous video, you notice I named it something easy that I can get to and quickly type in. That way it's relevant, but also quick to add. And as I mentioned, this does autosave. Last, I will select the output text box and set the value key located in the testing section to the page parameter. This allows for the flow such that when the send button is clicked, it calls the Gemini API key for an output. The page parameter then acts as a pathway between the Gemini action and response, with the response populating in the text box linked to the page parameter. All right, so that's it. The app is done. Now, as I start to build on top of that app and type in and test it, I know it's going to call the Gemini API and that'll give me my response. But as you can see, again, as I've been emphasizing, no coding was involved. The only thing I needed was my Gemini API key and an understanding of how to use Flutterflow because it's drag and drop. All I need was Gemini API key, natural language to ask questions and to build my code and to go from there. So now we've built arguably our prototype very quickly, very easily. Took me in the combination of those 3 videos, probably about 45 minutes to build an amazing prototype, and as well as including a machine, an AI model to really get that app up to really the next level. So let's talk about advanced topics. We're going to optimize our model, and then we're going to move our app into production. So when you're optimizing models, there's really 3 phases you go through. It's very cyclical, right? These phases don't necessarily end. You're going to move from one into the next to the next. The first is, of course, data preparation. You want to gather a data set of relevant data, and then you want to clean and pre-process that data, and then you format that data for fine-tuning. And so in the case of this app, it's going to be the data that you're using during the prototyping phase, the testing phase. That's going to be part of your data set to really help that model learn, for example, in this case, what is aggressive financial advice versus conservative, et cetera, et cetera. Then you actually do what's called the fine-tuning itself. So you select a pre-trained Gemini model, you use that prepared data set to fine-tune that model, and then you want to monitor the model's performance during that fine-tuning, right? So what is the risk tolerance that you're willing to accept? Maybe the information comes back and is maybe 80% correct. And that may be okay, right? As long as you have warnings and you've protected yourself around the output of what that model could give you, then maybe 80% is fine too. But you want to monitor your model's performance during fine-tuning. And then you evaluate and you deploy. So you want to evaluate your fine-tuned model on a held out data set. So this is very common model testing. Model testing evaluation as we go through it, right? You train on some of the data, but you hold some of that data out to evaluate and to test it on. And then you deploy the fine-tuned model for your use in your application. And that's really all you're doing. And then you're consistently doing that repeatedly over and over and over again as your model, as you get more data, right? You go back to data pre-preparation, and then you fine-tune it based off of your new data with some held out, and then you evaluate and you deploy. So we've talked about optimization. Let's talk about production. So as you go through Create Her Fest, I hope that you continue to work on your application. And if that happens, you may feel that you're ready to publish your application. So you want to move it to production and put it in the App Store, the Google Play Store, etc. Now, how should you do that? One way is to use Flutter. So Flutter is free. It's open source framework from Google that allows developers to build apps from multiple platforms using a single code base. It supports apps for iOS, Android, macOS, Windows, Linux, and the web. It includes tooling and UI libraries and integrates with Google services like Firebase, Google Play, and the Google Maps. It's cheaper to use than developing separate apps for each platform, and it's performant enough that users won't notice a difference between a native app and a Flutter app. Now, moving from Flutterflow to Flutter, as you can imagine based off of the name to an extent, is pretty straightforward. You just export your code from Flutterflow, you create a Flutter account, and you paste your code. So the pros of that is you have full control. You gain complete control over the code base, allowing for deep customization, optimization, and complex features. Flutter is great for performance. You can potentially get better performance as you can fine-tune the code for efficiency in Flutter. It's very flexible. You integrate any third-party libraries or native code as needed. And you get a lot of community support. The Flutter community is vast and they love to help. Now, the cons of that, you do have increased development time. So once you move your app from Flutterflow to Flutter, it does require a bit of a learning curve to become proficient in Flutter because it uses the language known as Dart. There is some maintenance overhead that you're going to pick up. You're now responsible for all code updates and maintenance. And you have a loss of that visual development. You lose the drag and drop ease of Flutterflow. Another way is to use Firebase and Cloud Functions. Flutterflow works really well across multiple environments and particularly integrates really well with Firebase. Firebase is a Google Cloud database product that is built for applications. So you remember before I mentioned having a database and connecting it to your app so you can gather that data, analyze that data, use it to improve your Gemini model? Well, this is an opportunity and this is your database. So it allows you to basically create a backend without managing servers. You effortlessly scale to support millions of users with the Firebase database. You have machine learning infrastructure built in, which goes, of course, really well with your Gemini aspect, and then hosting and storage solutions, as well as it lets you use Cloud Functions. So you can launch, monitor, and iterate with AI-assistive tools. You can simplify testing, run experiments to improve the app quality and engage users. It has a lot of amazing features. Cloud Functions is a Google Cloud solution that works as a function as a service, right? So this would be similar to almost in a way a custom action in Flutterflow. It is a serverless framework that lets you automatically run backend code in response to events triggered by background events. So that send button going to the Gemini API, very similar. So you got HTTPS requests, you have the certain SDKs or even cloud scheduler jobs. Your JavaScript, your TypeScript, or Python code is stored on Google Cloud infrastructure and runs in a managed environment. You do not have to manage and scale your own servers. But that's enough about me talking about Cloud Functions and Google Cloud and Firebase. Let's watch a quick video.
If you're an app developer, you know that a successful mobile app has lots of responsibilities. For example, apps built on Firebase use its authentication feature to sign in users, and they typically read and write data to its real-time database. They might also store files in the cloud using its scalable storage. These are all great features for building your app, but sometimes you can't put all your logic inside the app to run on the user's device. For example, prying eyes may try to reverse engineer and modify your app's code. Or maybe you need to change your app's behavior instantly without publishing a new version that your users have to install. And sometimes it's best to have a single place where expensive work is performed. Traditionally, to solve these problems, you would deploy your private code to a backend server that you manage. The app would then use an API or library to communicate with that server and issue requests. However, with Cloud Functions for Firebase, you don't need to set up, maintain, and scale that backend to get its benefits. Instead, you can write and deploy code to our servers that automatically responds to events in your app. Did a user just log in for the first time? You can send them a welcome email with a function. Did that user insert a value into your real-time database? You can update it right away with a function. And did that user upload photos to your storage bucket? You can analyze, resize, and manipulate them all with a function. And finally, with the function, you can also send a message with Firebase Cloud Messaging to that user's friends so they can know what's happening right away. You can even create functions to build a web-based API for your data that anyone can use. You write your functions in JavaScript for the Node environment, and all it takes is one easy command line to deploy your functions for immediate use. With Cloud Functions, you can seamlessly integrate many features of Firebase to provide the backend services that your app requires to be fast, secure, and complete. And you can do it all without having to provision servers, tune them, upgrade them, and scale them up or down to meet your users' demand. We handle the maintenance and you write the code, so you can quickly build apps without all the ops. To learn more about Cloud Functions and how you can use it to build out your Firebase app, check out the documentation right here. We can't wait to see what you build.
So if you want to know more about Firebase and Cloud Functions, the QR code at the bottom here, you can scan that because the Firebase team does a demo day every year, or basically this year, and I believe they did last year, so that you can watch and actually see demonstrations of them implementing Firebase. So with that being said, the next question is, if I want to move from development, right, to production, what should I do? Should it be Flutter? Should it be Cloud Functions in Firebase? Should I stick in Flutterflow? Well, let's figure this out. Here are some ways to think about it. So custom actions with the Gemini API. So this is what I originally used. Pros, fast iteration. You saw that. I quickly built up that app. Took me about 45 minutes. I can modify the code and see changes immediately without deploying to a server. Simpler setup. No need to manage a separate server-side environment, which is great. It has offline capabilities potentially. So with some careful designing, you might be able to offer some basic functionality even without an internet connection. Cons. There's limited processing power. So complex or resource-intensive tasks might strain the user's device. There's security concerns. So API keys are exposed on the client side, making them more vulnerable. For all my people who are in a security profession, I know that's probably causing you guys to have some gray hairs. So that's a con. If you're not in a security profession or don't know, just know that API keys, exposed API keys is very, very bad. There's also scalability challenges. It's not ideal for handling a large number of concurrent users. So again, if you're thinking about moving and using your app and putting it on the Android, the Google Play Store, or the App Store, you're going to want a lot of users to use it. It's not really scalable or viable for scalability at this point in time. So let's look at Flutter. Pros are Flutter. You get full control, as I mentioned, complete control over the code base, allowing for deep customization, optimization, and complex features. You get great performance, flexibility. You can integrate any third-party library or native code as needed, and you get a large community support. Some of the cons of using Flutter: you have increased development time, you've got maintenance overhead, you got the loss of that visual development that you got in Flutterflow, i.e. with the custom actions. Now, Cloud Functions in Firebase. The pros: you have enhanced security. API keys are stored securely on the server. You have improved performance. So you offload processing to powerful servers, Google servers. Scalability is great here. It handles increasing user loads efficiently, and you integrate really well with the Firebase ecosystem. The cons: slower iteration, because you require deployment for every code change, which can slow down deployment or development in a quick release environment. You have increased complexity and some costs. So Firebase usage may incur costs depending on your usage patterns. So which to choose and when? If you're in a quick release environment, start with custom actions. The fast iteration cycle is crucial for rapid prototyping and testing. And you consider Cloud Functions in Firebase later. As security or performance becomes a major concern, You want to quickly transition to cloud functions in Firebase as you move closer to that production. In a production environment, cloud functions are generally recommended. They offer better security, performance, and scalability, which are essential for a production app, even though Flutter could also be helpful here. Custom actions still are great for specific use cases. So if you want simple tasks or features that benefit from client-side processing, that's where you want to use custom actions. Now, and another thing to know is about the Gemini API. So that might have specific requirements or recommendations regarding usage. Now, there is official documentation to keep up to date with that information, which if you go to the website I sent you, you should be able to get the documentation there. So with that, let's summarize, and we have a quiz and some Q&A. So let's go over what we discussed. So Flutterflow, what is it? It's a platform that allows for anyone to build, drag and drop apps very quickly, right? You saw that in the videos. The Gemini API key. The API key is your gateway to really using the Gemini and using the power of Gemini in your applications. Optimization. Optimizing the model is going to be crucial for your usage as you look to hopefully move your application into production. And you're moving to production, you want to go and think of why and what you need as you go into production. Do you need API protection, right? Secure API keys. That may be Firebase with Cloud Functions. Or maybe you want to really own that code and own all that piece of it. That may be Flutter for you. So think of the reasons as you move into production and what you need going forward. Now with that, I promise there's a quiz. There is a prize for the person who gets all the answers correct. So let me go ahead and start that. Scan the QR code on your screen to get started. I'm going to start the quiz shortly. Give me a few minutes. All right, it should be allowing participants to join. I'll give everyone a few minutes to join. I promise in my opinion, the quiz is worth it. I'm not going to tell you what the prize is, but it's worth it. While everyone's joining, in the Q&A, how long does it take to build a basic AI app using Gemini and Flutterflow? I just did it through those 3 videos. I believe those 3 videos all totaled about 25 minutes. So I did exactly what you just saw across 3 videos in 25 minutes. Yes, I can drop the link for the quiz in the chat. Give me one second. Let me stop sharing my screen and grab that link if I can. All right, so let me get the link for you guys really quickly. That link is in the chat. While everyone's joining, another question. How is the testing of the app in Flutterflow like? Are there emulators to test with? Yes. So how you're going to test is you can actually do a couple of things. You can run a small testing environment to deploy in. You can also build out a testing environment on your computer, right? You can use Docker if you want to. That's completely viable, as well to test your app. So testing is very quick and efficient in Flutterflow. And honestly, I loved it. And at the end of this, I'm going to reveal something to everyone in the chat that I think shock a lot of people. So let me know when you guys have joined and we're ready to start. I'm going to start the quiz in a few moments. I think we're all in. All right, everyone ready? Now, there's not a lot of time to answer these questions, so you're going to have to be fast. So I'm going to To make it, I think, more efficient or fair, I'm going to go ahead and show you the questions so you have time. So the first one, what are the 3 benefits in using Flutterflow? The 3 benefits in using Flutterflow. All right, voting is done. I told you there's not a lot of time to answer these. Reveal the answer? Correct. No code drag and drop interface across multiple options for data connections. Very, very good. Our next question. What do you need to have to use Gemini and Flutterflow? All right, that's it. We're going to reveal the answer. You need the API key from Google AI Studio. You do not need a Gemini account. When you actually go to Google AI Studio, you will create an account there, but it's not a Gemini specific account. Our next question. How should you fine-tune the pre-trained Gemini model for specific tasks? This one should be pretty easy. All right, so the correct answer, you have to prepare the data, use prepared data set to tune the model. This is the process we discussed before. Just because it's pre-trained doesn't mean you don't need to fine tune. A pre-trained data set is great because it's been trained on swaths, huge amounts of data, but that doesn't mean it's trained for your use case. So fine tuning and pre-training may seem like they don't go together in the same sentence, but you have to keep in mind, just because it's been, again, trained on something doesn't mean it was trained on your use case, right? It doesn't mean it was trained on your users. It doesn't mean it was trained on what you're trying to do. It just means it was trained on enough data for it to not make huge errors and maybe what you're trying to accomplish. Next question. When should you use Firebase and Cloud Functions and not Flutterflow? All right, so the answer is you want high-level security, high-performance scalability, integration with the Firebase ecosystem. So fast iteration, not so much with Firebase and Cloud Functions. That's definitely more for Flutterflow, especially the simpler setup. But again, the other thing to know is minimal integration with Firebase ecosystem isn't quite true here either for Flutterflow. So that was kind of throwing you off. Moderate security, improved performance, potential offline capabilities, and need to integrate with Firebase's ecosystem? Not quite. Firebase and Cloud Functions have pretty high security requirements, right? So it's definitely going to be your last one when you want a high level of security, high performance, scalability, integration with the Firebase ecosystem. So let's see here. Everyone, who is our winner? By the way, this is the end of the presentation. Thank you everyone so much. That's my LinkedIn, that's my Sessionize. If you want to see what I like to speak about, I am on the Discord, the Baddies in Tech Discord, reach out to me there. But our winner. Everyone knows, who wants to know who won? Yes, I am a baddie. Our winner is Jessica, and I'm sorry I mispronounced your last name, Uvievo. Yeah. So so Jessica basically was faster. That's it. So it does show me the time. So here's what we're gonna do. Jessica, your prize is, I miss yours a great prize, or I think there's a great prize. You will have 3 1-hour sessions with me. So if you send me your link to my LinkedIn, you have my LinkedIn here. I will send you a calendar invite. You have 3 1-hour sessions with me. You can talk about whatever. You can do career conversations. You want to talk about what you're developing here. I'm not actually an official mentor in the Create Her Fest. So technically speaking, you get unofficial mentorship with me if that's what you want. Whatever, but you get 3 1-hour sessions. So a total of 3 hours with me to talk about whatever. If you want to vent, you can do that too. But that is it, everybody. Congratulations. Thank y'all so much for attending. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. I hope you guys learned a lot here. Really got the juices flowing in regards to what you can do, even if you don't have any coding background.
Thank you so much, Amy. This was really an incredible and interactive session. A big thank you to all of you everyone to joining us today. It's been wonderful to have you here. I've shared the link for a feedback. We would love to have your feedback and any suggestions that you have to make all these sessions better. And then I just would like to say that thank you. Enjoy the rest of your learnathon, and we would hope to see you for the next session.
Thank you, everyone. Again, please reach out to me on LinkedIn for the winner so you can get your prize. Or if not, I believe I'm actually in the Create Her Fest Discord as well. So find me there, send me a note, reach out to me there, okay?
Great. Thank you so much.